It started with something so small that, at first, I didn't think much of it. A patch of grass. That was all it was, just a strip of lawn in front of my home. I had spent hours keeping it green, neat, and alive, trimming it, watering it, making sure it looked good. But every single morning, like clockwork, the same thing happened. The same HOA board member, the one everyone called Karen behind her back, would dry her SUV across my grass as if it were nothing but dirt under her tires. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she wasn't paying attention. Maybe she had to swerve. But then the second time came, and the third, and before long, I realized it was an accident. It was a habit. She lived a few houses down, and instead of driving the extra 20 feet around the curve, she cut across my lawn every single morning. The grass I had cared for was slowly turning into deep grooves of mud. I told myself to ignore it. After all, it was just grass, right? Grass grows back. But that's not how things work in an HOA neighborhood. In an HOA, appearances mean everything. They fine you if your lawn is too brown, too long, or not community approved. So here I was, spending my weekends keeping it perfect, only to have it destroyed by one of their own board members. And the worst part? She knew. She absolutely knew what she was doing. Because every time she did it, she'd glance over at me if I happened to be outside. Not a look of apology, not even close. It was the look of someone daring me to say something. Someone daring me to challenge her. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe if I just reseeded the patches, it would be fine. Maybe if I ignored it, she'd stop. But ignoring a bully doesn't make them go away. It makes them bolder. Within a week, there were 3 clear ruts carved into grass where her tires rolled day after day. By the second week, the edges of the lawn were chewed up, the soil exposed, and an entire section looked like a dirt road. My perfect HOA-approved lawn was ruined. And then the letter came. A notice from the HOA. They fined me. Yes, me. The homeowner who had done nothing wrong. The letter said my grass was in violation of community standards, that it was unsightly and damaged, and that if I didn't fix it within 30 days, more fines would follow. I stood there reading it, stunned, the hypocrisy burning in my chest. The very person destroying my lawn was part of board fining me for it. That was when I realized this wasn't just about grass anymore. This was about control. Karen didn't just want to cut across my yard because it was convenient. She wanted to remind me of the unspoken rule in this neighborhood. The HOA holds the power and you don't. I had 2 choices. I could bend, pay the fine, fix the grass, and wait for her to do it again. Or I could fight back. And fighting back meant doing something permanent. Something that made it impossible for her to drive across my lawn ever again. For a few nights, I thought about what that could be. Rocks? Too easy to move. A small fence? The HOA would probably fine me for unauthorized structures. Cameras? I already knew the board would brush off video evidence as inconclusive. No, I needed something stronger. Something that would make a statement. Something that would stop her SUV dead in its tracks. That's when the idea came to me. Steel bollards. Thick, immovable posts set deep into the ground. The kind you see in front of banks or government buildings. Designed to stop cars from crashing through. If I installed them along the edge of the lawn, she wouldn't be able to cross anymore. She'd hit an unbreakable wall. It was risky. The HOA would definitely come after me for it. But this wasn't about following their rules anymore. This was about drawing a line. She had her power from the board, but I had something else. My land. And if she wanted to drive across it, she was going to find out that the shortcut she loved so much had suddenly disappeared. So I made the call. I hired a contractor, told him exactly what I wanted, and made sure the work would be done quietly, late at night, when nobody was paying attention. I knew that by the time the sun rose, everything would be different, because by then, the war over the grass would no longer be a silent battle. It would be open, obvious, and impossible for Karen to ignore. And when she pulled out of her driveway the next morning, expecting to cruise across my yard like always, she would find her path blocked. But I had no idea just how far she was willing to go after that. The sun rose the next morning like any other. Birds were chirping. Sprinklers were running, and the neighborhood carried on in its usual polished, rule-bound silence. But I was already awake, sitting at my window with a cup of coffee, waiting for the moment I knew was coming. Across the street, Karen's garage door opened. Out rolled her gleaming SUV, polished like a mirror. She didn't even hesitate. Why would she? For weeks, she had claimed my lawn as her personal shortcut, her private road, and today would be no different. Except today it was... She accelerated, her tires crunching against the pavement as she swung the wheel, angling directly toward my grass. And then it happened. The sickening thud of metal against metal echoed across the street as her SUV slammed into steel bollards I had installed overnight. Her car jolted, the front bumper crumpling like paper against the immovable posts. The sound made me wince, but at the same time, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. The bollards had done exactly what they were meant to do. Karen sat frozen for a moment, gripping her steering wheel, eyes wide with shock. Then she climbed out, her face red with rage, her voice carrying across the neighborhood as she unleashed a tirade of words I couldn't hear, but certainly understood. She stomped across the grass, my grass, like it still belonged to her, shouting and pointing at the posts as though they were some kind of personal insult. Neighbors peeked through blinds. A few even stepped out onto porches, drawn by the noise. It was one of those moments everyone secretly lives for in an HOA neighborhood, drama unfolding in broad daylight. And Karen, the board member who always acted untouchable, was suddenly on display, fuming, humiliated, and powerless. But humiliation only made her angrier. She pulled out her phone and started snapping photos of the bollards, of the damage to her SUV, of my house. Her fingers moved furiously, tapping out a message, no doubt to the rest of the HOA board. I didn't have to wait long for fallout. Within hours, I had a knock on my door. It wasn't Karen. It was two other board members, clipboard in hand, fake smiles plastered across their faces. They informed me, in that condescending tone HOAs are famous for, that unauthorized structures like steel bollards were a violation of community standards. I pointed to the letter they had sent me, the one fining me for damaged grass. I fixed the problem, I said flatly. Now the grass is protected. No more damage. They didn't like that answer. They threatened me with escalating fines, legal action, even the possibility of removing the posts themselves. All the while, Karen stood across the street with her arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. But what she didn't know, and what they didn't expect, was that I had done my homework. The bollards were installed entirely on my property, well within the legal boundary lines. They were approved safety structures, and the contractor had ensured they met every local code. The HOA might have rules about appearances, but they had no authority over what I installed to protect my land. So I stood firm. I told them they could send as many letters as they wanted, but the bollards weren't going anywhere. That only fueled the fire. Karen, embarrassed by the wrecked front of her SUV and furious that she couldn't bully me into submission, escalated the situation. She called the police. Yes, the police. She claimed the bollards were dangerous, that they had caused property damage, and that I had endangered the community. When the squad cars rolled into the neighborhood later that afternoon, I'll admit my stomach dropped. This was the moment Karen had been waiting for, her chance to use authority against me, to put me in my place. But what happened next didn't go the way she expected, because the truth was about to come out. The silence that followed the crash was louder than the impact itself. Karen sat frozen in her car, her face pale with rage and embarrassment, while the neighbors peered out from behind their curtains, some whispering, some shaking their heads, others clearly entertained. The one smug HOA president was suddenly trapped by her own arrogance, with the steel bollards standing tall like soldiers guarding the edge of my lawn. The HOA board members who had once backed her were now hesitating, realizing she might have pushed too far this time. Even the police, who had just pulled up, looked less like allies and more like witnesses to a battle that had been simmering under the surface for too long. In that moment, I wasn't just a homeowner defending his yard. I was a man drawing a line, finally saying enough was enough. But here's the real question. Was I protecting my property and my rights, or had I taken a step too far by turning my yard into a battlefield? Karen thought she owned the neighborhood, but when her power met resistance, It cracked wide open for everyone to see. So now, it's not just a matter of grass or bollards. It's a matter of justice, fairness, and whether someone like Karen should be allowed to keep steamrolling over everyone in her path. But I want to know what you think. Did I do the right thing, or should I have handled it differently? Was this justice, or was this revenge?